What if the prison you're living in was built entirely by people who don't even think about you? Here's the brutal truth nobody wants to admit. The people whose opinions you're losing sleep over. They went home last night, ate their dinner, watched Netflix, and forgot you existed before their head hit the pillow. You are not the main character in their story. You never were. The psychological phenomenon called the spotlight effect proves that humans massively overestimate how much others notice, judge, and remember their actions. Studies show people believe others notice their embarrassments twice as much as they actually do. You're essentially suffering for an audience that left the theater hours ago. Every decision you delay, every dream you shrink, every word you swallow, you're paying a real price for a fake judgment. The tragedy isn't that people judged you. The tragedy is that they didn't even bother. You've been handcuffing yourself to opinions that were never even formed. That realization alone should make you furious enough to finally break free. What if every person criticizing your life is secretly terrified of living their own? This is the part that changes everything when you truly understand it. Criticism is almost never about you. It's a confession. When someone tells you your dream is too big, your business idea is stupid, or you're being unrealistic, they are describing their own fears out loud and projecting them onto your canvas. Miserable people don't sit quietly in their misery. They recruit. They need company to validate their own decision to stay small, stay safe, and stay comfortable. The moment you decide to chase something real, you become a mirror that reflects their unlived life back at them, and that's uncomfortable. So they attack the mirror. Understanding this flips everything. Their criticism stops being a verdict on your potential and starts being evidence of their own unprocessed regret. The louder someone screams that you can't do something, the more you should hear, "I was too scared to try." Use their noise as fuel, not as feedback. Their fear is not your forecast. What if the version of you that people pleases is actually the most selfish version of you that exists? This sounds backwards, so stay with me. When you constantly shape yourself around other people's expectations, you are depriving the world of your actual contribution. You're giving people a performance instead of a person. You're giving the marketplace a watered-down product because you were too afraid to go all in on the real one. People-pleasing feels like selflessness. It feels like you're being considerate, humble, accommodating. But what it actually is cowardice dressed in polite clothing. You're not protecting others from discomfort. You're protecting yourself from judgment while calling it kindness. Meanwhile, your real ideas, your real creativity, your real solutions to real problems, they stay locked inside you, dying slowly. Every time you edit yourself to fit someone else's comfort zone, the world loses something it needed. Stop thinking people-pleasing is noble. It's the most expensive form of self-abandonment you'll ever practice. And the invoice doesn't come immediately. It arrives years later in the form of regret, resentment, and an unlived life. What if the most dangerous opinion you'll ever encounter is actually the one living inside your own head? Here's what most people miss in this entire conversation about caring what others think. The external critic is loud, but the internal critic is the one with 24/7 access. Other people can only attack you from the outside. But you let the voice inside your skull do the dirty work for them, and it's more vicious than any stranger could ever be. You internalize their possible criticisms before they even make them. You pre-reject yourself so efficiently that others don't even need to bother. You imagine the worst-case judgment, you feel it emotionally as though it's real, and then you make decisions based on a fictional reaction from a fictional audience. This means you've been outsourcing your self-worth to people who haven't even opened their mouths yet. The work isn't silencing the external critics. The work is cross-examining the internal one. Ask it, is this true? Where's the evidence? Who are you protecting me from? You'll find most of the time the critic has no answer. What if building genuine confidence has absolutely nothing to do with feeling good about yourself and everything to do with keeping promises to yourself? Everyone talks about confidence like it's a feeling you wake up with, like it's something the lucky ones were born with and the rest of us have to fake. That's completely wrong. Confidence is not a feeling, it's a track record. It's accumulated evidence that you do what you say you'll do. Every time you commit to something and follow through, even something small, you are making a deposit into your self-trust account. Every time you break a promise to yourself, skip the workout, don't send the email, don't have the hard conversation, you make a withdrawal. Over years of withdrawals, you end up bankrupt in self-belief, which makes you desperately dependent on external validation just to function. You need others' approval because you don't approve of yourself. And you don't approve of yourself because you haven't kept your word to yourself consistently. The solution isn't affirmations, the solution is action. Small, consistent, kept promises that rebuild the evidence that you are someone who can be trusted, starting with being trusted by you. What if the fastest way to stop caring what people think is to become so obsessed with a mission bigger than your ego that their opinions simply become irrelevant? This is the ultimate level. When you have a big enough why, a purpose, a mission, a problem you're trying to solve that genuinely matters, you don't have the bandwidth to process opinions. You're too busy. People consumed by meaningful work don't have the mental real estate to obsess over what someone thought about their Instagram post, or whether someone approved of their career choice. Purpose is the ultimate cure for people pleasing because it gives you a North Star that outranks every opinion in the room. When you know exactly why you're doing what you're doing, and that reason is bigger than your comfort and bigger than your reputation, criticism becomes noise that doesn't even reach you. The most impactful people in history were not beloved. They were misunderstood, ridiculed, and doubted in real time. They simply cared more about the mission than the applause. Mission over opinion. Every single time. That's the formula for living without the cage. What if I told you that the single biggest obstacle between you and the life you actually want isn't your competition, isn't the economy, isn't your lack of resources or connections or the right timing? What if I told you it's a completely fictional audience that exists almost entirely inside your own mind? Because here's what's actually happening to most people right now. They wake up every morning and their first instinct isn't, what do I want to build today? It's what will people think? They have an idea, and before they even finish the thought, they've already imagined the judgment. They've already felt the embarrassment. They've already decided it's not worth the risk. And so they don't act. They edit. They shrink. They perform a version of themselves that's been pre-approved by an audience that was never even paying attention. And then they wonder why they feel empty. Let me tell you something that should make you genuinely angry. The people whose opinions you are sacrificing your dreams for. They went home last night, they had dinner, they scrolled their phone, and they fell asleep without thinking about you for a single second. You are not the protagonist of their story. You are barely a background character. Yet you have given them veto power over your entire life. That is the deal you made without realizing it. And the moment you truly understand how absurd that deal is, you have no choice but to tear it up. The spotlight effect is one of the most well-documented psychological phenomena in existence. Human beings are wired to believe that everyone is watching them, evaluating them, forming detailed opinions about every move they make. Research consistently shows that we believe others notice our failures and our awkward moments at roughly twice the rate that they actually do. Twice. Which means you have been paying double the emotional cost for half the actual judgment. You've been bankrupting yourself emotionally over a debt that barely exists. The embarrassment you're trying to avoid, most people didn't notice. The failure you're terrified of, most people won't remember. The risk you won't take because of what they might say, they're not even watching. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. Because even on those occasions where people do judge you, where they do have an opinion, where they do criticize what you're doing, that criticism almost never has anything to do with you. Criticism is a confession. When someone tells you your idea is too ambitious, your goal is unrealistic, your standard is too high, they are not giving you data about your potential. They are giving you a window into their own fear. They are describing the conversation they had with themselves when they were standing at the edge of something scary and they chose to step back. And now that you're standing at that same edge and you look like you might jump, they can't help but try to pull you back too. Not because they hate you, because they need company. Because if you succeed after they retreated, their retreat becomes a choice they have to live with. Your success is the most uncomfortable mirror they've ever looked into. So understand this clearly, the people criticizing you the loudest are almost always the people who tried the least. Use that noise as fuel. Their fear is literally evidence that you're onto something worth doing. Let's talk about people pleasing, because this is the part that most people have completely backwards. Most people walk around thinking that constantly accommodating others, editing themselves to keep people comfortable, shrinking to fit into rooms, they think that's being considerate. They think it's humble, they think it's a virtue. It's not. It is the most sophisticated form of cowardice you'll ever practice, and it has a polite name to make it easier to swallow. Here's what people pleasing actually is. It's you prioritizing your fear of disapproval over your commitment to your actual contribution. When you water yourself down, when you hold back your real ideas, when you give the world the safe version instead of the true version, you are withholding something the world needed. Your real perspective, your real solution, your real voice. And you're doing it because you were too scared to find out if it would be received well. That's not kindness. That's self-abandonment with a smile on its face. And the invoice for it doesn't come right away. It arrives years later in the middle of the night when you realize you spent decades being someone else and you don't even know who you actually are. Here's the part that most people never get deep enough to see. Everyone talks about other people's opinions like the enemy is out there. Like if you could just block the critics, unfollow the haters, cut out the negative people, then you'd be free. But the most dangerous critic isn't outside you. It's the one operating full-time, rent-free inside your head. Other people can only throw rocks from a distance, but you let that internal voice in every room, every conversation, every idea, every attempt. And that voice is vicious in a way that no external person could ever replicate, because it knows exactly where you're most insecure, exactly what you're most afraid of, exactly which wound to press to make you stop. And the terrifying thing is, most people never even question it. They treat it like it's telling the truth. They hear you're not good enough, they're going to laugh at you. Who do you think you are? And they nod along like it's delivering facts. It's not delivering facts, it's delivering fear. And fear is not a forecast. The moment you start cross-examining that internal voice, asking it, Where's the evidence? What's the worst realistic outcome? And who exactly are you protecting me from? You realize it has almost nothing credible to say. It's been running the show on vibes and worst case scenarios this entire time. Now let's talk about confidence, because there is a massive lie circulating that you need to destroy immediately. Confidence is not a feeling. It is not something you have before you do the hard thing. It's not something some people were born with and others weren't. That is a story that keeps people comfortable in their inaction. Confidence is a track record. It is accumulated proof that you do what you say you'll do, proof that you can handle hard things, proof that when you say you're going to do something, you follow through. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, no matter how small, you send the workout even though you don't feel like it, you send the email even though you're scared, you have the conversation even though it's uncomfortable. Every single one of those moments is a deposit into your self-trust account, and self-trust is the foundation of everything. Because here's the cycle nobody talks about. The reason you need other people's approval so desperately is because you don't approve of yourself. And the reason you don't approve of yourself is because you've been breaking promises to yourself for years. You've been saying you'll do something and then not doing it, over and over. And at some cellular level, you've stopped believing your own word. When you can't trust yourself, you outsource that trust to whoever's nearby. You need them to tell you you're okay because you no longer have evidence that you are. The solution is not to feel better. The solution is to act better. Keep the promises. Stack the evidence. Rebuild the trust. Then watch how quickly you stop needing someone else to validate what you already know to be true. And finally, the ultimate level, the level where caring about opinions stops being a discipline you practice and starts being something that genuinely loses its grip on you. That level is mission. When you find something bigger than your ego, a problem that matters, a purpose that moves you, a mission that you would be embarrassed to give up on. You don't have the mental bandwidth for opinions anymore. You're too busy. You're too locked in. The most impactful people who have ever lived were not universally loved while they were doing the work. They were misunderstood. They were mocked. They were told they were wrong, delusional, arrogant, dangerous, and they built anyway. Not because they were fearless, not because it didn't sting, but because what they were building mattered more than how they were perceived while building it. That's the secret. The antidote to caring what people think is caring about something more than what people think. Get obsessed with something real, get committed to something meaningful, make your mission so loud in your own head that opinions become background noise. Because here's the truth. No one who changed anything did it by worrying about everyone's approval. They did it by deciding the work was worth more than the comfort of being liked. So let's bring this together, because everything said here points to one single truth that you need to carry with you. You have been living in a prison built from borrowed fears, fictional audiences, and internalized criticism from people who stopped thinking about you before you even finished worrying about them. You have been editing your life for an approval rating that was never being calculated. And the cost of that, the cost of the unlived life, the unbuilt business, the unspoken truth, the unattempted dream, that cost is real. That cost is enormous. And the only person paying it is you. The people who win, not just financially, not just professionally, but in the deepest sense of feeling alive and purposeful, they are not the ones who found a way to get everyone to approve of them. They are the ones who stopped waiting for that approval. They built the self-trust through kept promises. They flipped the meaning of criticism from verdict to confession. They found a mission bigger than their ego. They understood that the audience they were performing for was a hallucination. And they walked out of the prison they had built themselves. You can do this. Not because it's easy. Not because the fear disappears, but because the version of you that's waiting on the other side of other people's opinions, that version is worth the discomfort of the transition. Stop shrinking. Stop editing, stop performing, start building. The world doesn't need the approved version of you. The world needs the real one. What if the life you've always wanted is already yours, and the only thing standing between you and it is the opinion of someone who doesn't even remember your name? Because right now, at this exact moment, there is a version of you that has the business, has the confidence, has the relationships, has the freedom, and that version isn't smarter than you, isn't more talented than you, wasn't born luckier than you. That version just stopped asking for permission. That version looked at the crowd waiting to judge them and realized the crowd left. There is no crowd. There was never a crowd. There was only the voice in your head pretending to be one. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly why everything you've been told about confidence, approval, and what other people think is completely backwards. And more importantly, I'm going to give you the exact mental shift that makes the whole prison dissolve. Because once you see this, you cannot unsee it. And once you unsee it, you stop living for an audience and start building an actual life. Stay with me. This is the one conversation that changes everything.